following is a conversation with Mads Friis, high performance coach, author, educator, all-round wellness expert. Mads is also an entrepreneur, having built businesses, and was a competitive athlete when he was younger. Met Mads probably around 5 years ago now, when we were both at the start of an entrepreneurial journey at a competition in Denmark. And at the time I was captivated by his positive energy, his outlook on life. And at the time they were building a really cool business relating to surfboard rental, if I recall correctly. Since then, I've followed his journey, moving into the wellness space as what you call a biohacker, so someone that tries to hack their health, and watched his progress as he's kind of become a well-known figure within the space. And I've been particularly interested in some of these retreats that he does, where essentially brings people together, does breath work, gives them tools to live a longer, healthier, happier life. And as you know, as a listener to the Inside Matters podcast, that's something I'm really passionate about as well. You know, how do we optimize our life to maximize what we get from life? How do we be as healthy as possible, as happy as possible? And there is a toolkit, which we discuss in this episode. And you can expect to learn, if you listen to this episode, all about the fundamentals associated with health. We talked about sleep. We talked about alcohol. We talked about exercise. We talked about mindset. We talked about burnout. We also talked about some of the more cutting edge things, supplements, what to do, what not to do. So you'll enjoy this episode if you're interested in taking control of your health, what you can do to live a longer, healthier, happier life. And to be honest with you, it was just a good, fun conversation between two friends where we talk about the latest scientific evidence, but also we talk about anecdotes and what works well with Mads and his clients. Thank you very much for those who are supporting the podcast. We're starting to get some really decent traction actually on these episodes. And if you've not given us a like and subscribe, please kindly do that. It's one of the best ways to support the podcast. If you're listening, I think you might be a great guest, or you know someone who might be a great guest, please write to us or connect us with that person. And as always, we're very open to feedback. This is Inside Matters. My name is Dr. James McElroy. Hope you enjoy it. Why don't we just jump right in then to why are we all so sick and stressed and anxious and underperforming? How do we get here, and what is the latest science, and what is your experience telling us for how we can fix that?
Well, basically many of us are living shitty lives. Just call it what it is. Like, we have poor sleep, shitty diet, we have lack of community, lack of friends, bad relationships. It's the full spectrum. And we're stressed out about things that doesn't matter. We're comparing ourselves with everyone else on Instagram that are living a fake life. So we're just on all the different factors. We're living we're struggling a lot and living a bad life. So it's basically our soul and our body telling us dude, wake the F up. Something needs to change.
Have you seen the video of Eddie Abayu? Do you know who this guy is?
No.
Oh, you're going to love him. I'll send you it after. But basically, he just tells everyone to wake the F up all the time.
The huge guy that looks at food and says
yes.
People, this is not food. Wake the I've seen a few videos. My brother sent him. My brother's a big fan of him.
Oh, I love it. It's really, really funny. But what he's talking about is so true. He's going to the supermarkets and he's picking up a sandwich that's been heavily processed, and he's reading out the ingredients, which is 3 pages long. And he's like, guys, this isn't food.
No.
No wonder you're getting sick. Wake the F up.
Not rocket science. And I think that's one of the things as well. The more people I work with, and when I also I've recorded more than 100 episodes on a podcast, right? You really figure out our fundamentals are totally off. Right.
Could we go into the fundamentals, and then I'm going to bring it back to how you got into this, because you're also an entrepreneur. We met doing something entrepreneurial. That's quite an interesting story, I think, as well. But maybe we can talk about the fundamentals then and try and build a playbook for the listeners. We're usually talking about gut health here, which is, I think, a fundamental that ties to diet. But there's a lot more, isn't there? There's the sleep, there's your mental attitude. So why don't you walk us through then the kind of blueprint, and we'll get people to hear about your book as well, so we can maybe drive some people to that.
Sure.
Thank
So
you.
there's different ways of defining it, but most people that are in the health space agree on some of the same fundamentals, which is one is mindset. So that's like, what's your perspective on life? How do you see things? What questions are you asking yourself? Are you always asking yourself, why does this always happen to me? Or are you asking like, okay, what's the useful thing I can get out of this? Or what can I learn from this? So that's the first mindset. You can define it different ways, and there's different things we can do to improve our mindset. So let's go back to the things later, what we can do, but just kind of list the different ones.
Yeah.
Then we have sleep and rest. So this is both the amount of hours and the quality of your sleep, and also in general down-regulating your parasympathetic nervous system. Basically fancy words for chill the hell out. Like we need to have that body relaxing a bit more. We have diet. Most people agree on that one as well. Then you can bring in light. When I normally talk about, I normally say nutrition, and then I say it's both the food, it's the water, the air, and the light that we get.
Interesting.
And then we have movement, basically moving the body. That's essential. We also have social relationships, which is another key factor. So those are the ones I would say are really like the key fundamentals. And then there's the things that like sometimes we can do all of those things right and still have challenges. In that case, is often some kind of toxins, or it can be parasites. It can be, as you say, gut issues that we might not just fix that easily with some food, because there might have been something going on that we need to change. It could be mold or something else. But otherwise, if we get the fundamentals down, we normally end up doing quite well. And I see too many people in the health space forget about relationships, because you can do all of those things right, but if you have a really crappy romantic relationship, you're going to be drained of energy, or if you don't have any friends or so on.
Thank you. So we're going to go into each of those and how we can create a blueprint for maximizing them and optimizing them. But why don't you just tell us a little bit about your journey then, and what's brought you to doing what you're doing now, speaking to experts, talking about wellness? Because when we met, you were building a business, startup. I'm not sure if you were looking after yourself and following the fundamentals at the time, but
So this long story short of my journey is kind of in my teen years, I got extremely passionate about mindset, wanting to figure that out. Some bad events and people not doing well in my life in my teens. So I started looking at like, what is it that makes people happy? So that's kind of been a driving question for me through my entire life. What does it take to be happy? So I studied psychology, and I was doing sports at like elite level and so on. And I was eating the worst diet. The only veggies that I knew of was the ones on a salad pizza or in a durum. So,
or in a burger.
on a burger as well. I didn't even know the names before I was 25 about proper like veggies. I knew
No
iceberg, I know tomatoes, cucumber. I really had a horrible diet, but I was exercising all the time, being active, and so on. And then in my mid-20s, I started having more and more health issues, some autoimmune diseases. I have psoriasis as one thing. And that's when I realized that positive mindset is not enough. You actually need to put proper food and other things into your system to be well. So you might be doing de-stressing things, you might be like full of positive emotions and so on. But I didn't understand, like I kind of had the relationship, you would say. I had movement and I had mindset down. But I definitely didn't have sleep, rest, nor did I have the nutrition down. So that was a big learning journey.
So on the fundamentals, do you have to do all of them? Is that the whole point? Or can some compensate for each other? What's been your learnings based on your clients and yourself?
No. You need all of them. That's why it's fundamentals. Like it's like you can't build a house if you don't have the proper foundation of the house. And then, of course, you can have some that are lower at one point or another. And I think especially on the entrepreneurial journey, you will have times potentially where your relationships, like your friendships and so on, are suffering because you are so focused on building that business. And you will also see that you might be suffering on some sleep and different things. And you can do it for a while, but it's going to be a matter of time before your body starts paying the price. So we've seen many super successful people fully sacrificing their health for many years, and then afterwards paying a ton of money to regain it. So if you make enough money in those 3 to 5 years, probably good enough. You can buy like hyperbaric oxygen chambers, you can do all the fundamentals and these advanced things.
But it's too late.
But I would
Sometimes
be
it's too late, right?
cautious. Oh, one more time.
Sorry, sometimes it's too late. You hear all these stories of, I suppose the kind of classical point of view was you'd work as hard as you possibly can until you're 40 or 50, and then you have a heart attack. You know, and you made your millions just before then. That's the old school mentality. The American mentality is, I think it's changing, but historically it was you just got to grind all day, every day. And if you're sleeping, then you're not working hard enough.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But in
reality,
reality,
sleep when you get old.
Sleep when you're dead.
Yes.
So we've been,
but that's
I think,
the thing, like
abusing
when you get old, then you don't get old.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because you've interviewed some people on your podcast and you've discussed, you know, how do we live to over 100, 120, right? And it is, I listened to that episode, I've forgotten the name of the doctor now, but you did this, the episode was titled, How Do You Live to 120? And you're discussing the fundamentals. Also, seaweed came up, which was kind of interesting because that's microbiome modulating. So did you take control of your health through these fundamentals? Yeah. And what happened then? You became happy and you look younger.
I was already happy. So, but I got my health back. So I think I was lucky that I started early on the mindset part. So when I ran into these challenges, I was like, this has to be able to be solved. Like, I don't accept this verdict from a doctor saying there's nothing I can do. Like, there must be a way. So in that way, like the mindset work that I had done for 10 years, you could say, helped me go into that journey of figuring out, okay, what to do. But I've tried so many crazy things, James. Like, I've been growing reedgrass at home. I've been trying these brain scanning, like so many weird things to test out on my own body. I've tried to like follow to be, okay, what do we have science on first before we go into too much like ancestral wisdom, but then at the same time, just experimenting with different things. And so that's kind of been the journey, as you said, like I worked with a startup, different reasons. We ended up closing that down, paying the investors a lot of the money back. That's a full episode on the startup journey as well. And then slowly moved more and more into
That's not a bad outcome though. It's not a bad outcome if the investors got some of their money back rather than, you know, losing absolutely everything. I think it was called Woo-wee. Is that right? I've got something. Yui, yeah. It's to do with surfing, I think.
Exactly.
It's been quite a long time ago, wasn't it? So with regards to the biohacking then, that's absolutely fascinating. So the biohacking is a term used by some people to describe, you know, taking control of your own health through different techniques and kind of hacking your health through tricks and tips and things. When we started, we talked about the fundamentals. They don't sound like biohacks. They just seem like sort of the standards. So could you tell us about some of the things you've tried then, the kind of cutting edge stuff, the more crazy stuff, and have any of them had a positive impact on you? Do you still do any of them?
So I think the most important is actually back to the fundamentals, get them right, and then I think it's testing. Figuring out what are some of those points. I had some kind of, I don't remember, it was a parasite or something else that this functional doctor ended up finding. They normally don't recommend to do antibiotics, but here I got like on a 3-week, the most heavy antibiotics to kind of kill it. So I think it's extremely important if you're doing the fundamentals and you're still not getting well, figure out what is that thing in your body. Some people, it's childhood traumas. I think mostly though, and then we have a big movement now that everything is a childhood trauma and we're all traumatized. I think a lot of it is basically then you might have a parasite that needs to be nuked instead. Wow. So I think the testing is one of the key things that I've done to kind of figure out imbalances in nutrition, and then getting the right supplements according to my body and what I need. So my DNA, I'm not good at absorbing B vitamins, so I need an extra B vitamin complex. I was also very low on B12 at one point. So those things that gets it more specific to what is it you should do. I also did a gut test. So several years ago, I had the first pleasure of pooping into a bag, which is a special user experience that you probably tried as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've done all sorts of things like that, both for our company, but also otherwise. And I've not gone as far as I think as you've gone on the self-testing, but I think that's probably because you'd have to go to different kinds of doctors, as in not the mainstream Western doctors. What you're talking about is something slightly different. I think it's almost like a functional clinician.
Yeah. So you can go.
So did they take more of an interest in your story than the classical doctors?
Yeah. So like this, you can find classical MDs that then gone into the route of functional medicine, where they do more testing than the average doctor would do, and that they also use lifestyle medicine. So that's the route that I've been going first, and then also found other people that don't have the MD experience. I found that MD experience is amazing, but it's not necessarily where you learn about health. You learn about medicine, and you get amazing at medicine, and big respect for that. But they didn't spend 5, 7, 12 years on learning about health. They spent that years learning about medicine and fixing broken bones, and they are brilliant at that.
Yep. But they're not brilliant maybe at the fundamentals and keeping people healthy when they've not got something that needs a drug.
So I asked the doctor how much they learned about nutrition at the education. And I thought the person was kidding me. And I had to ask several doctors if this was actually true, because I didn't believe the result the first 3 times I heard it. But in Denmark, they have one day where they learn about nutrition. And I was like, you're like, for real? Like, real? And that's the person telling me about how to become healthy. Like, you had one day, a few hours about food, which is one of the main things for health, instead of that's when I realized as well that doctors are amazing, and I appreciate our doctors, and I also appreciate pharma and so on when it's used correctly. But also that you shouldn't take all of your health advice from a doctor, because they only know part of the equation.
Absolutely. In fact, I think, just casting my mind back to my medical school journey, I don't think we had a single lecture on the importance of food, to be honest. And we definitely 100% did not have a single lecture on gut health or the microbiome. Because the reason I got so excited about the microbiome was I read about it when I took a year out of medicine to do a degree in physiology, and I was essentially given or had more free time to learn about other areas that weren't part of the curriculum. So there you go. Not a single lecture on food or gut health. And now we know that these things are fundamental. And it segues nicely, I think, into that first fundamental, which is what you put into your body. So what have you learned then from your experiences on the Growth Island podcast as host, but also as someone who's working with high-performing people and also people who are wanting to get better?
Yeah.
Can I ask the hard question? What's the best diet for everybody?
There's not one best diet. That's one of the key takeaways. There's fundamentals, again, or principles, I would call it, when it comes to diet, but it's different what works for people at different times. And I think one of the really good examples was one of my guests called Chuck Hazzard, who was like a wearable guy, and he tracks so much stuff. And he was dominating in ultra marathons as a vegan. And then suddenly his health crashed. So he's been doing really well for, I think it was 12 years, he was telling, suddenly just crashed. And he then had to go on a carnivore diet, which was very hard for him and his wife, because that whole identity of being a vegan, crushing it on that diet and so on. And then like the whole ethical thing with animals and so on. But then he changed his diet to like grass-fed meat, organs, all of that stuff. And he's got his health back. So I think there's no one
Wow.
perfect diet. It really depends on where you are. And as you know, the gut is different what your gut need at different times. But what we do know for sure is, should we eat all of that crap that's not food? Is that real food? Like when you look at those packages and like, if your grandma could not recognize this as real food, don't eat it. I think that's the easiest thing to remember. If this is not something would be recognized as food, stay away from it. It's not human, not for human consumption.
So that's the first principle. Eat real food. And could we maybe go a bit deeper? You mentioned the carnivore diet, the vegan diet, veggie diet. What's been your experience in terms of what's worked best for people? Because some people just don't even know where to start, to be honest.
So,
because 1 minute, all the influencers are saying fasting. The next minute, they're all saying eat protein as soon as you wake up. The next week, protein's actually damaging for your kidneys and it might be associated with less lifespan. 1 week it's don't do this, next week it's do that. So it's very difficult for people to understand, what do I actually do? So what are the principles that should last for the next 1,000 years or forever, in your opinion?
So first one, eat real food, something that your grandma could recognize as food. Second thing, don't stress about food. The mental impact on the food, which is the problem with these influencers, is because it's always like fear, fear, fear. And that has an impact on how you absorb the food. So don't be too concerned about food. Know that your body is quite strong, but there's a limit for how much abuse you can give it. But like, it's not going to be one ice cream that's going to knock you out. Second thing is, I don't do that well enough. Chew your food properly for proper digestion. That's something you know about as well.
Interesting.
It's so important. Like, we're so busy, we're running around and we don't chew it, then we don't absorb the food properly and like we get gut issues.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not going to lie to you. I ate my lunch standing up today and I shoveled it into my mouth and I went back to my desk to look at some data. Inside Matters podcast, guys.
But it's difficult. And because we want to go, and so many of us are wired to constantly be on the go and do stuff, right? I think many of us, and myself included, can have a hard time just sitting still and doing nothing, right?
Yeah. So what are the rules for chewing? I've heard some things before, like, spend a minute or something like that on each mouthful. But based on what you're saying, you're probably best not to stress about it. Just chew.
Chew properly. Don't swallow. I remember one of my friends, I'm actually meeting him tomorrow, my oldest childhood friend, and he was known for being able to swallow a pizza the fastest, right? It was almost swallowing like in 3 bites. He would curl it up, and that's definitely not the way to go. So just take your time to actually chew it into pieces. It also means you're going to feel full instead of when you just swallow it. So you actually give the body the time to feel full so you don't overeat, which is one of the problems for many people. And then I would add the principle of enough protein. That's one of the big things I see in my clients. So I do different tests. I do hormone tests where we test testosterone, we test cortisol levels and some other hormones. I've also done some thing called like biological age testing. There's different ways of doing that, and there is a longer discussion about how accurate are they. None of them are 100%. So these are just different kind of proxies for biological age. That's really important to say. But I've seen here turning up protein intake makes a huge difference. And again, back to basics is one of the things I feel on myself as well. Doing all of these complex things, supplements, testing photobiomodulation, and so on. And then I start to look at how much protein intake do I get. And I got way too little. It's like, it just makes no sense to talk about all these advanced stuff if you don't get the building blocks. If you don't get the building blocks, and so many of my clients are also too low. I had another guy that was like, I think I'm getting enough protein. I was like, fantastic. Let's just test it for 1 week. Just like take pictures for yourself. Just like measure like the big protein sources, like the meat or the chicken or the fish.
Mm-hmm.
And turned out he was getting something less than 60 grams of protein. And this is a guy per day. And this is a guy that weighs over 85 kilos. This is like, and it doesn't matter about all these advanced things. We need to fix again back to the basics, and protein is the building blocks. I don't know, like the Latin words mean something like building block or something else. It's awesome. Crucial.
And how much protein should we be shooting for? And is it the same for men and women?
That's a really good question. So The number that I've been told for one of the people that I trust the most in the space is called Umar Dokkan.
Yeah.
He is one of the leading experts within functional medicine, and why I love him is because he is not dogmatic. He's not like religious, and he's very much can speak for the pros and cons of different things. And I spoke to many people in the industry about who is the best, and most people point to him being one of the best in Europe. And the number he gives is 1.6 gram of protein per kilo that you weigh.
Got it. Because I've heard 1 gram per kilogram in the past. I've even heard 1 gram per pound, but that's usually from the bodybuilders who are, you know, wanting to get huge, and it's probably a little bit excessive, isn't it?
But it's so important to get that fundamental down. Then the last I would add, most likely, well, there's also just getting water. Like I get surprised. I take that for granted because I've always been extremely thirsty. I've been tested for diabetes too since I was a kid several times because I've been drinking so much water.
Wow.
But getting enough water is essential, 2 to 3 liters. I don't think there's one perfect number, but it's so essential that we get the water in as well.
Every day.
And then there's about veggies and fruit. And I know this is going to piss off all the carnivore people out there. And I took the primal health coach education, which is more in the low carb religion. And I really appreciated that education. It was brilliant. I learned a lot. And they have all the scientific backing for why low carb is the best. Still find when you talk to many people and people that have many people into the practice that there's, again, different things that work for different people. But there's a number, apparently the Danish Health Authority looked into, that you need 600 grams of greens, berries, and fruits a day. And for every 100 grams less you get, I don't know if it's 10 or 20% higher mortality chance of the most known lifestyle diseases.
Wow.
So that's a key thing.
That's huge.
It is, and we do it in our program. I have a longevity program with Omar and a doctor, functional medicine doctor, and MD. And there we turned up, all of them started eating more fruits, veggies, berries, and they were all doing so many things before. Like, I got surprised with our program. I thought we would get all the unhealthy people. We got all the super optimizing already that wanted to do right. And all of them had more energy after doing it. They were like, this is weird, but it works.
Wow. Well, I'll just give you a microbiome reference that you might be able to take away into your practice on your podcast. I've seen data that was presented by one of the top microbiome researchers in the world, someone called Professor Rob Knight. And what they did was they mapped microbiome diversity, which is a proxy for health, versus various different variables, including the big ones like antibiotic use, how you were born, exercise, lots of things. And interestingly, surprisingly for me, the thing that tracked strongest of all was the number of different types of plants that you consume within your diet. Stronger than recent antibiotic use, which I thought was amazing, because the antibiotics just blast through large proportions of your microbiome. That's what they're designed to do. But actually, it was the plants that tracked highest. So what you're talking about, I think, is probably people directly influencing in a positive manner the microbes that live inside of them, which then have a positive impact on the inner aspect of the intestine and the rest of the body. So eat more plants. That's the advice. Eat as many plants as you can. And, you know, the carnivore diet side of things is kind of fascinating, because some people say they get such amazing transformational benefits from just eating meat. And that's counterintuitive for the microbiome perspective, unless they've got lots of bad ones in their gut. Because what they're then doing is suppressing the growth of the bad ones, which is maybe why they feel better. So for most people, I think increasing your plant intake as much as possible. And what you're talking about, I think, is on your program, all these biohackers who are taking all the supplements and doing sauna and plunge, and I hope we talk about that. But actually, they got this huge benefit from just eating more berries.
It's not rocket science.
So the takeaway, it's not rocket science. To bring it back to the start, is just to eat more berries.
It's actually a challenge when I'm out
plants.
talking, because I like to talk about the complex stuff. And people want to hear the next thing, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, NAD, plus spermidine, ficitine, all of those cool things, right?
Yeah.
But it's just we really need to make sure
Yeah.
that we have the fundamentals down. And I think the whole thing about super fascinating, the study that you're referencing, that is actually the plant that makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Where we see carnivore works really well is if you have a lot of autoimmune challenges. So several people do well on a carnivore diet for a while to clean up. What also happens, whether people go on a vegan, carnivore diet or something else, is that they cut away all the crap. So by doing that alone, they often get better. Sometimes it creates challenges on long term. I know, again, Umar, I know he has people in the clinic coming in that have been doing carnivore for several years and are now getting challenges. So not everyone does. A good friend of mine is a carnivore, he's a doctor, MD, fantastic guy, extremely fit, and doing well. And he has been on a carnivore diet for several years and is very religious about it and have all the science behind and all the references that says that's the best thing ever. But I think we will see in the future that some people have been thriving on it, but some people also got challenges doing it long. And what you have to remember, a good part of the carnivore diet is that you get liver and you get the stuff that we don't eat in Denmark, at least. You get the full animal, and the liver is the super vitamin. If you really want the super vitamins, you need to eat liver. And you need to eat
really
the things that are not known to be the fancy part of the animal. Those are the things that are the most nutritious.
So not lean chicken breast and fillet steak. You can't just have that every day. You got to eat the whole animal. There you go. That'll put some people off. Eat your berries. So that's sounding like some really strong principles. What about alcohol? What's the gist on alcohol? Because that's another controversial one, isn't it? Some people say a little bit's good. Some people say nothing's good. What do you recommend?
I don't think we have a full fact on it. So we know from the blue zones, the places where we have the most people living to over 100 years old, I think it's in 5 out of 6 of those blue zones, they have a glass of wine a day.
Hooray!
So that's one data point, right? That says okay, they also drink them at 5 o'clock, so there might be something about timing. There might also be something about the grapes and the quality of the wine. So that's one data point pointing towards that wine might actually be good. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
But another thing, so whether it's causality or correlation, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is that they are very social and it's stressing down and so on. I don't think it's horrible to drink a glass of wine and some alcohol occasionally. You also got to look at how are you, what other impacts is it having? If you want to live the ideal super life, you would probably cut it out. But I think another good example, again, of everything in the right dose and that we shouldn't be afraid of so many things. I have a good friend who is one of my good biohacker friends and that tracks everything, and he's always stressed. Always stressed out, right? And that's one of the key things. And he was drinking whiskey with the boys one night, really. And you know what happened to his HRV?
Scottish,
unfortunately not. I think I'll ask him about that, and otherwise I need some recommendations. But he cares about quality, so it might actually have been some Scottish. But he actually saw that his HRV data got better because now he was just laughing, having a good time, not stressing.
Wow.
So of course you shouldn't be drinking whiskey every single day.
Do you know who else?
That's not the takeaway. Yeah. But in a few glasses occasionally might not be that bad if it gives you a lot on the social skill and it makes you laugh and have fun and Yep.
My HRV on my Whoop gets better on the weekend, and it does correlate with alcohol. Probably because during the week when I don't drink anything at all, I'm just wired, training super hard, work. And then Friday comes and it's okay, I'm going to just chill. But it's probably not the alcohol. Maybe it's the ritual, which is what you're talking about with the blue zones, I think. It's maybe part of that. Okay, we're winding down now, finally. But if you're living in the blue zones, maybe they just wind down every day.
I would think so.
Sounds good. So your clients then, what do you recommend? You can have a glass if it works for you, and if it's a problem for you, then cut it out.
Yeah.
Is that essentially the essence of it?
I recommend not to drink during the weekdays. And especially not as something to fall asleep. It's one of the most misused sleep aids. The problem is it doesn't make you feel or sleep better. It just like drugs you to fall asleep. So you get like really poor sleep quality. But so I tell people, like, if it makes them happy to do that in the weekends and so on, occasionally, like, don't get festival drunk, we say here in Denmark, where you get like absolutely shit-faced and like you can't remember your name and you have blackouts and so on. But if it gives you a lot of joy to have a few glasses and you do a lot of other good things, I wouldn't be afraid of it. Again, back to like the not being afraid of all of these health things. I think we really have a problem with the social media that like the things that are trending on the reels are the thing that makes you afraid all the time. And that mental stress is potentially worse than the effect of doing something. Personally, I have like with my autoimmune diseases and so on, I rarely drink alcohol. So I only drink alcohol if I drink to get drunk. Like not shit-faced, but like if I'm out for vacation.
Festivals.
Because otherwise I don't, I think a really nice smoothie or juice is better. So I don't see the point. I don't have the same enjoyment of getting 1 to 2 glasses if I can fill my body with something that's much more nutritious. So that's what I do. Yeah, but I also associated when we talked about mindset, about something fantastic, getting a juice or a smoothie. I don't feel like I'm missing out. I'm not like, oh, I feel so bad for me. I'm such like, it's so hard. I cannot have this beer. Oh, it's so tough. It's like the sun is shining and now I cannot get this beer. Like life is so tough. Like I look at it being like, hey, I can get a fantastic smoothie that's going to be filled with good stuff. My body's going to build up. My gut microbiome is going to get better. Like, this is fantastic. I feel empowered. So the mindset is extremely important. And if you have that mindset that you feel like you're really
just
missing
imagine
out,
you holding that smoothie like, So I'm just imagining you holding that smoothie like, yes, here it comes. I love it. So, you touched on sleep. Could you just maybe unpack for our listeners why alcohol isn't so good for your sleep? Because that probably will surprise some people because they think, oh yeah, have a glass and I'm out.
Yeah. So basically when we drink alcohol, it makes us relax a bit more and kind of drugs us to like seduce us. I think that's the English word. So you fall asleep, but it like when we measure the sleep quality, we can see it gets much worse. So I've spent way too many hours listening to every single episode of Matthew Walker, the sleep scientist from Berkeley. I love to listen to a scientist, and he also brings up the different studies about when you put them in a sleep lab, and it's really strong results. I don't remember the exact numbers and so on for how it impacts your deep sleep and other things, but they definitely see it when they do the studies. And many people have the sleep trackers that are not that accurate. I wouldn't be worrying too much about them, but they still see like the heavy effect as well when they're drinking alcohol on the sleep scores and so
on. What is the best tracker? Is there a best tracker for your sleep and for your recovery, or are they all a bit like gimmicky, so to speak?
That is a really good question. I was writing a semi-angry post about sleep trackers last week. And then I had to go in and double check on the sleep studies, if there was any new studies on PubMed. Just to give some context, we now have a disease where people are so worried about their sleep that that's become a disease, that then people can't sleep. So that's why I had my problem with the sleep trackers.
Wow.
If the trackers... Yeah.
It's neurotic.
And if the trackers are making more harm than good, then we have a problem. And we especially have a problem if they're not accurate.
Yeah.
And I interviewed several years ago one of the salespeople at Orange that told me that their sleep stages were off, and him and the sleep scientist wanted to remove it, but everyone had it, so they couldn't remove it for marketing reasons. That's a salesperson saying that. You know, like, and then I went in to look at PubMed as well, and I've been following the last couple of years. And the problem is you can not easily, but it's better, you can measure REM and non-REM sleep. That we can get fairly accurate. But the story behind deep sleep is that some white sleep scientists, men, decided 50 or 60 years ago that we have we can see we have REM and non-REM. And non-REM, we can see there's like deeper stages, but there's not like this is deep sleep. So it's like they agreed, okay, a certain amount of hertz with the brain and different things. Let's call this deep sleep. But so deep sleep is not that exact science of like, this is where it is. It's just something we said like, here's the cutoff. So now we agreed that this is deep sleep. So then if that's the way we measure it, then that becomes very hard to measure as well afterwards, because it's not like an exact thing. It's just deeper stages of sleep. And I was pretty surprised when I got that explanation. I was like, okay, that's very different than when I hear all of these doctors and scientists speaking about it, but it makes a lot of sense that this might actually be true. And he has nothing to gain by saying that. He has everything to lose by making that explanation. But Aura came out with a new study in March this year from Japan, on a Japanese population, I think it was, where they had better data on the sleep stages. I still wouldn't I wouldn't focus so much on the sleep stages, again, because non-REM, the different stages of that, is not the perfect science. It's kind of like we put something arbitrary up to say now it's deep sleep, right? So I would rather just look at REM and then the total non-REM.
And non-REM. Got it. And do you recommend these trackers more generally for the clients that you work with and yourself?
And I did back in the days, but after figuring out how it challenges people, and again, I become more and more aware of how much these things about health make people more concerned and more stressed. We have too many mental stressors already. So it's not one of the things I normally recommend. I have one guy now, though, that is kind of semi-burned out, doesn't have the same energy and so on. And there would be really nice to get some HRV data on him. So heart rate variability. So there would be nice to put a tracker on him. So I recommend people more to test it for a while and then let go of it and not be neurotic about like what score they're getting and so on. Live life. That's one of the key things as well. Live life. Even though I'm a biohacker, I see so many biohackers being unhappy. They're too focused on measuring different things and forget about like just having fun, laughing, and not being afraid of seed oils and all of those other bad things, blue light and so on. It's like, yes, it's not good for you, but like chill out.
Chill out, man. Who's the guy who wears blue light blocking glasses 24/7? It's Dave.
Yeah,
Dave
he also
Asper,
tells
I think
them.
it is, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, he also sells them. That makes sense. So everyone's got maybe their own motivations and so on. I know many people who religiously look at the Whoop, and if you start your day and you see you're on 10% and you're in the red, well,
yes,
it just ruined your day. And you kind of know anyways if you're not so good, right? So what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Are there any non-Whoop or tracker-based tools that you teach your clients? Maybe just, do you feel refreshed? Do you feel groggy? That kind of stuff. Like, is there another way of doing it where you're not religiously looking at everything every day?
Devices, I would check the data in the evening instead. So I wouldn't check it in the morning, so it doesn't influence your day. So you can write down in the morning, how are you feeling? And then you can correlate it in the evening to see how you're actually feeling. I think that's the way to use it. Because otherwise...
Yep, thank you.
You don't really win anything by seeing it in the morning, except from being like, ooh, I feel really bad. So you could say as a top athlete and so on, you could take it a little bit more chilled if you look at your data, but you probably know if you should take it more chilled. So the only reason then should be, okay, I feel like I had a shitty night. I feel like I need to take it more chilled. Let me just double check. If my data says that I did amazing, then I believe I'll just power through and I won't take that extra nap or something else. Then it can make sense to check earlier. But otherwise, if you don't have the opportunity to take it more chill, I would definitely not check the data. Then I would just focus on the positive and what you can actually do.
Appreciate that. That's really good. And in terms of sleep, people might see these shorts of Brian Johnson saying, I've got a 100% sleep score for 6 months. Well, that's fine, Brian, because you're spending your whole life trying to get a perfect sleep score. But for other people, it's just not practical. So what are your tools then for getting an amazing sleep every night? And how do people know if they're getting good sleep or bad sleep if they're not using trackers and so on?
10, 15 minutes after you got up, are you feeling fresh and awake. So it's okay that when you wake up that you feel tired, because you'll most likely be taken out of a sleep stage. So if you're not in like the lighter form of sleep, you will feel a bit groggy because you just got pulled out by your alarm from a sleep stage. So many people get concerned like, I'm probably sleeping bad and so on. I'm a little bit groggy in the morning and so on. It's perfectly fine. The question is when you actually get up and get moving, do you continue to stay groggy? So again, not being too concerned. Again, I talked to a client the other day who was concerned about his sleep because he feels a bit groggy and he wakes up to an alarm. And I asked him, like, how are you feeling after those 10, 15 minutes? He's like, I actually feel quite good. I'm like 8 out of 10. Like, okay, then you're doing quite well. So we know that going to sleep at the same time every single day and getting up at the same time is massive. And I think it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago that, again, Matthew Walker, one of the guys that I follow because he's at the forefront of sleep science, shared about this study that came out that they had seen that the regularity had a bigger impact than the number of hours. It is. I would still like to see that study because of this always, like, I love the art of science and understanding what it actually means, because of course it doesn't mean that you can just sleep 1 hour consistently at the same time. Like, so where is that threshold? Where do they actually measure? But what it does kind of point out is the importance of regularity. And that's really like a key thing for getting good sleep. The other thing is exercise. It goes back to basics again. So there's another study, I think it's 15, 20 minutes of brisk walk, how it have a significant effect of not waking up during the night and just having better quality sleep. Like simple things of living well. Yeah, unfortunately. Like I can tell you about it's more fun to be like, hey, take magnesium. And I also take magnesium before I sleep. So I have like those 300, 350 milligrams or something like that. You can also take some other things to kind of, if you have higher stress levels, there are these different herbs and so on that can help. Chamomile tea, there's also studies on, I think there's a few different herbs and other things you can take to improve your sleep. But you gotta focus on the fundamentals first, like regularity. Then you want to have a cool room because our body temperature have to fall with 1 degree when we have to fall asleep. So there's simple things we can do to optimize our environment, make sure that it's really dark. You don't have like electronics. You want to make sure that the bedroom is only used for the 2 S's, sex and sleep. And you want to have both. That's important as well for good health.
Absolutely. 100%. So the supplements then are actually just the tip of the pyramid.
So for
very, very top.
So it depends on your challenges. And that's the hard thing when you need to make things that are social media ready, right? Because we just want to say like, you need to take magnesium. That's a key thing for getting better sleep. That sounds good, right? That's a 5-second clip. We can get that out. The best thing for sleep.
100%.
It varies. So I have some clients that have really high cortisol levels, or they might have some muscle pain and so on. And that's where magnesium can help a bit, especially with the muscle pain. Or if they have like too high cortisol levels, there's some of these different herbs that can make them relax a little bit more. I don't remember the exact ingredients, but there's one supplement that I recommend some of my clients that has a mix of different herbs that makes them relax more. So it all depends on what are your challenges for what to actually do. But we all need the fundamentals of a cold room, a dark room, movement during the day. We want light in the morning, so we get that melatonin production growing in the evening, and that matters that we get natural light in the morning. We want the consistency. We want to have enough hours. So we have all of these fundamentals. We want it to be not noisy as well. We want to have a proper mattress. We want to have proper air in the room. So all of these fundamentals that we, of course, and that can be easy to sort out once.
And what about the time spent though? You mentioned that 1 hour, that's obviously an extreme example, but is there any truth to this 8 hours a night?
The studies that we have,
figure
there is, I think it was one in Japan and another study in the US and the UK where they tested what's the ideal amount of hours. We said before that we can see all-cause mortality is higher for people that sleep much more than 8 hours. The problem with that, again, understanding the science, is that the people that are sleeping more than 8 hours are the people that have different diseases and so on, and that's the reason why they're sleeping so much. So it's not because they're sleeping a lot that their all-cause mortality is higher. is because people in that group. So that's a misunderstanding that people are saying in the sleep environments, being like, don't sleep too much, it's dangerous for you and so on. That's not true. It's misreading the data. So what these studies actually found was they put people in the sleep lab. They let them sleep as much as they could. The first couple of nights, they would potentially sleep 10, 11 hours. So there's no alarm or something else. But after 1 to 2 nights, it would stabilize. And one study, I think it was 8.5, and the other one was 8.6 hours that people were stabilized sleeping a night when they had the opportunity for all the sleep they could get.
So it is round about that 8 hours of quality sleep per night is probably the sweet spot. So that's good to know for people to shoot to. Yeah, that makes sense. And what about eating close to bedtime? Because this is a debate that comes up again and again. And you go to the blue zones and they actually do eat quite late. But maybe they sleep later versus the latest from most of the influencers, for example, Brian Johnson, who is the extreme example, who stops eating at 11 a.m., which I think is just, it's quite funny. Eat at like 5 or 6 and then sleep at like 9 or 10. So what does the science say about that?
As far as I understand it, it's mixed. So for some people, it helps to eat a little bit later. You don't want to have a big meal close to sleeping. So I think that we can agree on. Not a big meal close to sleeping, because then your digestion has to work during the night.
Yeah.
But I remember, I haven't read the study, but I had one doctor on the podcast that mentioned the study where they gave, I think it was younger guys, 2 kiwis before sleeping, and how that improved their deep sleep.
Wow.
So
just a little bit then.
But then again, so I think it's mixed, and also like different studies are showing different things. I wouldn't eat big meals before going to bed, but if you're super hungry and you didn't get enough, I would eat food. So as a general rule, I would try and get that big meal early and probably not eat close to falling asleep. That would probably be the general recommendation. But some people, their glucose levels fall too much during the night, and then they wake up and have to go to the toilet. But it's reality, the body waking them up, telling them to hunt for food.
How do you know if it's your body waking you up or if it's you need to go to the loo? Is there a technique?
That's where the biohacking is cool. Because you can get a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, and use that for 2 weeks, and then you can see how are your levels during the night. Is it because your glucose levels are getting too low? And then what you can do before going to bed, the 2 kiwis or some quality hunting or something else. If it's not, then you want to focus on other things. So that's why I do love the biohacking space, and that we get data. I just think it's important that people remember to live and use the data in the right way.
I love that, and not become obsessed. I think that's overlooked, isn't it? These biohackers are maybe just biohacking themselves into obsession.
Some are usually super empowering, and that's fantastic. And some are getting so caught up with the data that they're so afraid of the entire world.
I love that. So we just talk a little bit more about the final elements of the fundamentals, then we can talk about your book. And I would also like to talk a little bit about the more fun is probably the wrong word, but like the cold water immersion, the breathing. You do these men only retreats. I just love to dig into that a little bit because I think it's kind of interesting. And I would like to go on one myself. But let's just kind of finish off on the fundamentals. So should we talk about movement then? And light? How do these things help, and what do we do to maximize their yield?
So we're born to move. I think that's so essential to start there. And we're living an artificial life where we're sitting down way too much. And it's killing us slowly. And it doesn't have to be complex. But we need to move that body. It's simply not built to just sit at a computer as we're doing all day. I don't remember the numbers of the all-cause mortality, but like if you just add a few more steps a day. I've seen some studies on it, but it's astonishing when you look at some of the numbers for just moving a little bit more. And here we're not talking about working out 6 times a week. We're just talking about getting in some steps. So many people talk about the 10,000 steps, but that's actually kind of an urban legend. I think I don't remember if it's 5, 6, or 7,000 where we see most of the results, but 10,000 is just a nice number to go after, and I always try to get over my 10,000. but it's not because that's like the magic number for how many steps. The more steps, almost always the better. Of course, you can get too many, but you want to get at least 7,000 steps
every day.
Every day. And if you can't get 7,000 steps every day, you have a problem.
What if you're lifting really heavy weights or you're doing some sprinting?
Yeah, but you still need to get that body moving. And I think it's going back to the start. Why are people feeling bad? Because they're living a shitty life. If you don't get 7,000 steps on a regular basis, if most of your days is less, something is wrong. You need to start moving that body. You need to have a lot of movement that is like low intensity. So, but if you go to more of like, if we should come with a recommendations, men ideally need to lift something heavy 2 to 3 times a week. It's enough. You can lift more, which is great as well. But 2 to 3 times a week, really lifting heavy is important. And we need to get something also to get our heart rate up once in a while. And I think just keeping it at that will solve problems for 95% of people. And I often say the best movement you can do is the movement you do.
Got it. I love that. So do you think we would have all these chronic diseases and, you know, it sounds a bit like conspiracy, but would there be people in the hospital right now if the big food industry didn't exist and everybody did their fundamentals? How impactful could it be?
It'd be insanely impactful. We would still have some people, but not that many. And I think that it's crazy how the agenda or the narrative got hijacked. And I'll try and keep my cool talking about this without getting to, but like, what the hell? Seriously, the whole like, it's your genes making everything, like, oh, you're obese because of your genes. Have you looked at pictures from the 70s? There's no fat people on the beach. We didn't evolve that fast. And we're not about fat shaming. And some people have some challenges and we need to help them. We need to give them love. But the shit that's going on right now, we're telling them it's their genes and they're victims and there's nothing they can do. That is an industry that should jump in the ocean and seriously just like, it's not okay what we're doing to people. We're victimizing them instead of actually helping them, giving them some love to get better. And we would not have all of these diseases. We also see it when we look at the graphs for the different diseases, how they are exploding and so on. And we have a problem with some industries that are incentivized for keeping us sick. I don't think that's a conspiracy at all. That's very simple. True. You just follow the numbers. You look at how much fraud have the food industry done. Just like, it's a fun thing we call it conspiracies, right? I know you don't see it that way, but like it's often talked as like, oh, that's a conspiracy. But like we all agreed on the tobacco industry. We know about that. We know they were doing a ton of shit. We know about the oil industry. Well, we're also figuring out the Coca-Cola bad guys that has been doing fraud with studies. We know that Pfizer has the biggest like settlement in history, billions of dollars for committing fraud. They're like, you would never let them take care of your kids because they've committed so much fraud, so many illegal things, been part of killing people and so on. You have the opioid crisis in the US as well. So there's no conspiracy about how some of these companies are absolute crooks and how we have industry supporting it. McKinsey, one of the big management consulting companies as well, has been part of like making some of these crazy calculations. It's one of the biggest embarrassments for them because it got out there that they've been kind of calculating how to sell more of these drugs and get it going. And we have the videos for the opioid crisis about how they were saying in like, oh, but this is not making you addicted to anything. There's nothing. I'm a medical doctor. Where it's just like, it's absolutely insane that we make it kind of like, and the problem is that there is some craziness sometimes. Like some people are, you would say, more on the scale, and then they make everyone that question whether like the food industry or something else isn't like that crazy category. Where it's just like, no, we're just following money. We're just following like hardcore facts. No conspiracies, just hardcore facts.
Yeah, I mean, I'll push back a little bit because I'm someone trying to develop new drugs, and there's definitely a need and a place for pharma. And without pharma, there wouldn't be all of the medicines that are currently available to us at the moment. But what you're saying, I think, is correct insofar as they've all got an agenda. We're living in a capitalist world, and at the moment, the bottom line in terms of profit is what people care about. It's what shareholders care about for the most part. It's evolving, and I think what we're seeing with Ozempic, for example, and these other anti-obesity drugs is it's changing behavior, because people are understanding that actually, hold on a minute here, maybe our metrics are wrong. Maybe we should be focusing on how do we allow people to live a longer, healthier, happier life in totality. And part of that is the food. So as people get healthier, they want to be even healthier, right? Because if all you've actually known is, well, I don't eat any vegetables and I never move. And I don't really sleep. I drink 10 coffees a day, sugar in every single coffee. I smoke, I drink every night. You don't know what it feels like to feel good, because you've not had a good night's sleep in 10 years. You can't take the stairs up to your office because you take the lift every day. So I think there's a bit of a change coming. The big food industry has a lot to answer for. You go into a supermarket, as we were talking about earlier, look at all the cereals. Come on.
Poisoning people. They're poisoning people.
You are honestly killing people. You're killing and harming people through these foods. What people think is a healthy breakfast, for the most part, is honestly probably as unhealthy as you can possibly get. It's full of sugar. There's no fiber. There's no micronutrients. It's just a whole bowl of rubbish. And that's how you're starting your day every day. You're not even doing any exercise to increase your insulin sensitivity. You're just piling up this sugar bowl, having a glass of orange juice, which, by the way, sorry to say, particularly when it comes from a carton with no pulp, is not very good for you. And you're wondering why you're sore and you can't. And it's the big food industry, and it's the agenda, and it's the lack of education.
I fully agree. And just to say,
same page.
I'm not against all pharma in any way. Like, I think it's extremely fascinating what we can do. I think it's just about using it right. So I'm very grateful for Leo Pharma and my psoriasis medicine and many other things. It's absolutely fantastic, and it's fascinating how we can learn to take more control of our body, and it's one of the things that many biohackers are fascinated about as well. So I think we need to continue to develop new medicine. We just need to use it right.
Absolutely.
And just like antibiotics, it's been a lifesaver. People were dying of things before. But should we take as much antibiotics as we're doing today? No, it's causing problems, and we're getting resistance towards it and so on. So we're causing new problems. So I think medicine is fantastic. I think pharma is fascinating. I just think we need to use it in the right way. And we need to, and I think Ozempic can be fine to help someone get started on the weight loss. We just need to make sure that it doesn't just become a lifetime consumer, but that we actually help them get that boost to then start moving more. Because I'm part of building a company. One of the companies I started building in one of the venture builders is helping people get rid of diabetes too.
Nice.
And we do that with diet. And these people are beautiful people. They're told that they are losers. They're told there's nothing they can do, that they're dumb, they're just fat, and so on. And they're just going to live on this. And they're beautiful individuals. And we take them through this program. We give them confidence. We tell them they're good. We tell them that it's not just about the genes. Tell them about it's a hard world that we're living in, and all of the influence from the environment is that you're eating different things and so on. But they have the power, and it's going to be a difficult journey. And we help them learn to eat a low-carb diet, which is important if you have diabetes too. And within 3 to 6 months, what happens is what the doctors say is not possible. It's a miracle. They suddenly no longer have rates like of diabetes. And it's just, it works. It's possible.
Yeah.
But they have a community, a supportive community. They learn how to eat. We help them understand the setbacks, because there will be setbacks. But they can stay out of medicine if they learn to eat differently. And they can do it.
100%. Yeah, Ozempic is not a lifelong solution for people. There are side effects. Decreased muscle mass is one that I've seen come up again and again in recent times. And yes, the results are insane, but are the results Ozempic having a specific effect on the body that's beneficial, or is it the result of the weight loss that's having the beneficial effects on the rest of the body? And nothing can be as good, I think, as the fundamentals in this context. Maybe combined with the fundamentals, for some people, as you say, it gives them that acceleration and fair play. But I read this article about Elon Musk, and it was like, he was taking Ozempic and he was having 1 cheeseburger a day. It's like, really? You've got basically unlimited resource and you decide to eat a cheeseburger every day, not like the healthiest salad you can possibly buy and the freshest berries you can possibly get. Imagine, I don't know, maybe we would have got to Mars already if he'd been eating the right food, because he'd be, in a better state. So what about role models? Do you think our leaders and influencers maybe could do a better job at sort of being more balanced and healthy and so on? I don't know what it's like in Denmark, but I've not seen a jacked prime minister yet. We've not seen one that's in amazing shape.
No. Unfortunately not. Well, I would say we actually had Anders Fogh, who was in fairly good condition. But otherwise, they're not the most healthy. But for sure, they're not the best role models. But also, I don't think they know the right stuff about health. So I think they're just also being fed the wrong data and the wrong knowledge, which is one of the reasons why they're living as they are. That's at least what I would hope to think is one of the reasons.
But people like you should be advising these people. Yeah, we should have on the socials of all of our leaders in the countries, hey, this is what I'm having for breakfast. Organic this, I've got my blueberries, I've got my raspberries. Why am I eating this? Everyone who's looking up to me, because I want to perform at my best in my role as president or prime minister. Can't imagine Donald Trump doing that, but hopefully we find one soon who inspires and leads and pushes the agenda so that everyone's living a longer, healthier, happy life.
So you have JF Kennedy Jr. I'm not sure if you've seen any videos with him. He is like...
I have.
People call him a conspiracy theorist and all that stuff. He's been for the environment and been cleaning up rivers, but he calls out that the CO2 is kind of a scam, being it's the wrong focus. We need to clean up the environment. We have massive issues, and then we are focusing on CO2, which is essential for plants, and also we have too little CO2, most of us, in our bodies. But really cleaning up, and he calls out the food industry as well, and he's jacked. I think he's probably on some TRT as well, but he is.
He is 100% on TRT. Yeah, I listened to something when he said he was on TRT.
Nice.
But he
how
could
old
be
is he?
a great... I don't know. But he looks to be in great shape.
Yes. I saw him a video with him in Muscle Beach or something in the Venice Beach.
Really?
And it's just he looks amazing and he can move and do stuff and so on. And he eats, as far as I understand, real food. That's a role model.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, it's awesome. Well, fingers crossed then we can... hopefully get someone in the most powerful country in the world actually, pursuing the fundamentals.
Yes, and clean environment. I think that's one of the key things as well, is that the nutrition we're getting, everything from the meat, the fish, the veggies, and so on, are just full of crap. We really have a huge challenge in getting proper food, and I think we really need to talk more about the environment. We need to talk about cleaning up the environment instead of talking about CO2 all the time. We need to have real food and the eco system and so on, and get that cleaned up, because that's at least in my opinion, when I look into it. I was on the climate trip and so on in 2009 on a scooter to Denmark and so on, cheering for the climate, and I wrote a climate report for my university and so on. So I looked into CO2 and really been on, and then I still believe we need to do a lot. I just think we really need to look at our cleaning up all of the pollution more than being so focused on CO2.
Can you tell us a little bit then about some of the funner stuff? So the breathing, sauna, cold water, infrared, and maybe even some crazier stuff. I don't know what the biohackers are doing these days, but
sure.
It'd be great to hear.
If I had all the money in the world, I would have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber.
Wow.
There's a study in Israel. We had 30 participants that were 63 plus years, at least over 60. And they went through 60 treatments over 90 days. They didn't change their diet, they didn't exercise, and so on. And we saw telomere length, was it increasing with 10 or 20%, something absolutely insane. And telomere length is one of our longevity markers.
Wow.
We also saw senescent cells massively decrease, which is one of the other things we saw. We see a lot of benefits. And I interviewed one doctor a while ago, medical doctor who does this in San Francisco, and also shared about how many of the tech companies and the companies with a lot of money have this for the executives. So that's one of the cool things.
Is that right? Wow. Okay. And can you get the same benefits from Wim Hof breathing,
Not
or you need the
you need
chamber?
the chamber. You need the chamber. Yeah, Wim Hof breathing is cool. Starting to get more questions as well about whether you, depending on your life situation, if you're doing too much stress on your body, if you should do it every day. And the hyperventilation. I just came back from London actually this weekend, where I was at the Soma breath instructor course, where we talked a lot about the importance of the balance between oxygen, CO2, and nitric oxide, and also in regards to blood pressure, which is like the silent killer that many people are running around with having challenges, and how less hyperventilation can be very beneficial. To be fair to Wim Hof, I'm not talking badly about his method at all. It's fantastic. I've seen it and I've done it a lot. And he doesn't say that you should hyperventilate all the time. It's like controlled stress that he preaches. So that's really important to say, which is very important. Many people in our society just have so high stress levels that they might benefit more from some down-regulating breath work than doing something that's another stress.
That's really interesting. So the whole concept then of you need to do an ice bath every day might be wrong, because it's such a massive stress in your body. It is a huge stress, right? Like you're jumping into something that could kill you if you stay in there for too long.
Yeah. So depends on how much you push it and what your lifestyle is. I think most people do well from taking the cold shower or that 2 minutes plunge. It has massive benefits, many different things. But if you are already stressed, it might not be what you need to push your body through. Same with too much CrossFit. So I take a cold shower every morning, and I would love, one of the other things when I get a big house is going to be having a cold plunge. So I love it. And where my body is, for most people, it can be good. Everything is like in the right dose. And it would just be much nicer just to say everyone needs to do cold plunging, right? I do recommend it for several of my clients. And one of my clients that got a biological age that was a few years younger, the things he added was more cold water, more protein, and just a little bit of like more strength training. So those were like main things that he changed to see a positive effect. So like the cold immersion is amazing. And so is the sauna, and so is breath work. So just like with everything, you just don't want to overdo it.
Got it. Thank you. I have to say 100% the same. Been doing cold shower every day for 4 years now. And one day I will have the cold plunge every morning, followed by my coffee, which we haven't talked about, but that is an amazing feeling to come out the plunge and have that warm cup of coffee, you set your day up. Sauna is also awesome. And I've just been starting to do a bit more infrared as well. I have noticed a few benefits, I would say, from the infrared. And also sauna, I think, seems to be a really nice de-stressor. Somehow just makes you feel great. Don't know if it's the endorphins or some other mechanism.
I think it's amazing.
In your mail...
This morning, I had a sauna goose, which is where you have 3 rounds of 10-15 minutes of sauna and these different oils on it. And then in between each session, you have the cold water exposure. So that was my morning start. I run down to the place where you can do it, and then it ended up being a walk back. So like, I'm a big fan of all of these things. So I might sound very negative about many of the biohacks on this podcast, but that's really not the case. I'm really a big fan of it. It's just everything needs to be in the right dose. And often some audience that I talk to are people that are go getters all the time and high stress. And sometimes they actually just need to do something that is more down regulating for the system. But I would like cold water every day, unless you are too stressed out, is amazing. And it does build your resilience. It does build your mental toughness as well, doing something that's uncomfortable. So there's so many benefits. Plus then we can talk about the biological 100%. Effects as well, that we have a Danish scientist, Susanne Søberg, who has done some of the studies on it and also been on Huberman talking about like some of the benefits of the cold exposure. And we're figuring out more and more about it. And also like, how cold should the water be? What's the ideal dose? Which is again just like what have we done studies on? So like the ideal dose for everyone, I think she talks about 11 or 13 minutes a week. But like, I'm not sure how many different things they tested. Like, did they test 20 different like measurements, right? They probably tested 2 or 3 in those studies. Right. So that's also, we got to take the things with a grain of salt when we get these different studies. and we need to learn to feel our own body, like what feels good.
Because there's a huge difference if you've tried it between like a 0.5 degree plunge and like a 6 to 8 degree plunge. You know, if you've not tried the 0.5, it's like, wow, this is taking your breath away. And it's like, I don't want to be in here any longer.
And your body also adjusts. So that's also important. Like the dose, like in the start, you can't take that much sauna or that much cold. And then after a while, you can take a lot more. So it's easing into it.
That's awesome. Could you, just before we kind of wrap up and so on, maybe tell us a little bit about your writing and what your vision is and what you're trying to achieve from what you've released? That'd be really nice to hear.
So I found that it's so fascinating and fun to look at all these things we can do. And most people know 80 or 90% of what they should do, but few people do it. So basically I was lucky to spend a semester at Harvard and had a brilliant teacher there where I learned a ton about psychology. I had a class called The Psychology of Emotional, Behavioral, Motivational Self-Regulation. Very long title. But it was fantastic. And we learned so many different tools about how to actually succeed with stuff. So I took what I've done a lot of workshops about habits and read all of the other books on habits from James Clear, which is a brilliant book, which is kind of like the full Bible, to Tiny Habits. And you'll find all of the habit books say the same things. And it's the same research that it like draws from. So what I did was to write like the super tiny book, kind of like a workshop, so that you go through these exercises and you don't have all the long stories about someone that was doing something, etc. But you just have like, this is what you need to do. Now do the exercise. This is what you need to do. Now do the exercise. So because I found that I love James Clear and Tiny Habits from B.J. Fogg, who's like the scientist from Stanford and done a lot of stuff also in behavioral science. But not everyone have like 16 hours to read through. So often people are too busy anyway. So that's why I wrote the book, to make it more accessible and to do the exercises and just get right into like, how can you succeed better with habits.
And is there going to be another book in the future? Did you enjoy the process?
Yes, I wanted to write a book on sleep, biohacking, longevity. I have the outline for a few of those books as well. I realized that so I love to do different things. So right now I am focusing on other projects than the book writing. But I started outlining a lot, especially for sleep, because it's such a big part and it's so fascinating. But it's not going to be within the next year, I think.
I think you should start somehow a biohacking startup, because the passion just comes through. I can even feel it. I know you're on a TV screen, but I can feel the passion. And you know, if you've got so much passion for something, you can definitely create a business from it, I'm sure. I know you are with your own coaching and so on, but maybe there's a product there somehow that could be interesting.
So I will be for sure. So I'll be doing, right now I'm doing more of the coaching and the workshop for corporates and the boot camps.
Yeah.
I will be doing in a few years, when I have this more stable, you would say, or kind of scaled up, I'll be spending 1 to 2 days a week on building new scalable products and investing into companies and helping them scale. So that's for sure part of the plan.
So let's talk then when there's a gut health one. I'm interested in seaweed. I'm interested in herbs and fungi. So if there's a biohacking, direct-to-consumer gut health one, please give me a call. I'd love to talk. Okay, we're getting now to 1 hour, 20 minutes. It's been really actually just a joy and a pleasure to reconnect with you. And you've obviously got a very positive outlook on life, and you're really passionate about everything to do with living the best life you possibly can through the fundamentals, but also through this other stuff. So wanted to thank you for coming back on and giving us the time. Really appreciate
it. Talking with you again, James.
And,
it's been way too long.
Yeah.
And really a pleasure.
Yeah. And if people want to follow you and keep up to date with everything that you're doing, what are the best platforms to do that?
So I'm actually most active on LinkedIn of all platforms. So find me there, Mads Friis. I'm sure that there might be my name in the show notes. I also do post on Instagram, but right now, to be honest, it's mostly repost of LinkedIn. I will be getting more into that and YouTube later, but that's the main platforms. And then I have my website, which by the time this is out is going to be madsfriis.com. So easy, just my name.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, that concludes the episode. Really enjoyed it. And wish you all the very, very best with everything that you're doing, helping the people of the planet live longer, healthier, happier lives. Thank you.
Thank you, James.